At the end of the 1st century AD, the Roman Empire was in a period of transformation and challenges. Following the era of Augustus and his successor emperors, the empire experienced both periods of prosperity and turbulence. The reign of Vespasian, which initiated the Flavian dynasty, brought stability after the tumultuous year of the 4 emperors in AD 69. Vespasian was succeeded by his son Titus, whose brief administration was marked by tragedies such as the eruption of Vesuvius in AD 79 and a devastating fire in Rome. Titus, known for his benevolence and the completion of the Colosseum, died prematurely in AD 81, leaving the throne to his younger brother Domitian. The transition of power occurred in a context of political and economic uncertainties. The Roman Senate, already cautious after years of conflict, viewed Domitian's rise with a mixture of distrust and apprehension given his reputation for a severe and ambitious nature. Domitian was born on October 24, AD 51, the second son of Vespasian and Flavia Domitilla. From a young age, Domitian was marginalized compared to his older siblings, Titus and Domitilla. His childhood and youth were marked by a rigorous education, though he was often kept in the shadow of Titus's achievements, who accompanied their father on military campaigns. With Titus's death, Domitian was proclaimed emperor by the army and the Senate, despite the latter's reservations. Titus's death, speculated to be hastened by natural causes, has theories suggesting possible poisoning, though never proven. Domitian's rapid ascension to power was facilitated by the solid structure left by Vespasian, but also met resistance among senators who feared his autocratic nature. Domitian began his reign with a series of measures to consolidate his power and ensure the loyalty of the legions and the Roman people. He increased soldier salaries, reformed the monetary system to stabilize the economy, and sponsored major public works. However, his government quickly revealed a tendency towards authoritarianism. He sought to reaffirm imperial dignity and authority in ways that often alienated the Roman aristocracy. Domitian's policy was clear: he would not tolerate dissent. His relationship with the Senate deteriorated rapidly, and he began to govern increasingly independently, relying on the bureaucracy and his Praetorian Guard. The agrarian and fiscal reforms he implemented aimed to consolidate his control over the vast empire but also generated resentment among the traditional elites. Thus, the beginning of Domitian's reign was marked by a mix of continuity and rupture. He followed some of his father's pragmatic policies but imposed a more centralized and oppressive regime. His ascension to the throne, though legally unquestionable, planted the seeds for a government remembered as much for its accomplishments as for the severity of its repression. The authority Domitian sought with such zeal would eventually be his ruin, but not before leaving an indelible mark on the history of the Roman Empire. At the end of the 1st century AD, the Roman Empire faced a series of economic and social challenges threatening its stability. After the territorial expansion of previous centuries, the empire found itself in a moment of consolidation but also tension. Constant military campaigns, though glorious and expansive, drained the empire's financial resources. Maintaining vast borders and defending against barbarian invaders required a permanent, well-paid army, further straining the imperial coffers. The Roman economy depended heavily on agriculture, as well as the wealth brought by conquests and trade. However, a series of poor harvests and rising inflation began to affect the well-being of urban and rural populations. The Roman currency, the denarius, was devalued several times, eroding the purchasing power of ordinary citizens and causing widespread discontent. Corruption within the government and the mismanagement of public resources also contributed to the worsening economic crisis. Socially, the empire was marked by a significant disparity between the rich and the poor. The senatorial and equestrian elite enjoyed privileges and vast estates, while the urban plebs and slaves often lived in miserable conditions. Social tensions were exacerbated by the lack of opportunities for social mobility and rigid class divisions. Popular discontent was often expressed in riots and revolts that had to be forcibly suppressed by the military. Amid this scenario of economic and social pressures, internal dissensions emerged that challenged the political cohesion of the empire. Factions within the Senate vied for power and influence, and there was growing resentment against the centralization of power in the emperor's hands. The provinces, although governed by Roman representatives, had their own loyalties and ambitions, which sometimes resulted in local rebellions. Domitian, upon ascending to power, found an empire in crisis. His response to internal dissensions was marked by a policy of authoritarian centralization. He sought to strengthen imperial control over all spheres of administration and did not hesitate to use force to suppress any sign of insubordination. His relationship with the Senate became increasingly tense as he removed senators deemed disloyal and replaced them with trusted allies or even figures of lesser prestige but unquestionable loyalty. Furthermore, Domitian implemented fiscal reforms that, while intended to alleviate the economic crisis, often penalized the upper classes. He raised taxes and intensified the collection of tributes, which generated even more resentment among the wealthy. His policies of urban construction and reform aimed both at improving infrastructure and maintaining public order but were also seen as a form of imperial propaganda. Domitian's response to internal dissensions and economic challenges was a mixture of pragmatism and authoritarianism. He managed to stabilize the empire to some extent and maintain order, but at the cost of alienating much of the Roman elite and establishing a climate of fear and repression. His government, while effective in some respects, paved the way for growing discontent that, after his death, would result in a reassessment of his policies and the restoration of a more favorable balance between imperial power and senatorial authority. Upon ascending the throne, Domitian was quickly perceived as an authoritarian ruler determined to consolidate his power indisputably. He saw the centralization of power as essential to the stability of the empire and thus adopted a series of strict measures to ensure his authority. His approach to governance was marked by a combination of administrative reforms, absolute control over the military, and relentless repression of any form of dissent. Among Domitian's first actions was the reorganization of the Roman administrative system. He increased control over the provinces by appointing loyal officials directly from the imperial circle and reducing the autonomy of provincial governors. This administrative centralization allowed him to oversee tax collection and the enforcement of imperial laws more closely, minimizing corruption and increasing government efficiency. However, this measure also generated resentment among provincial aristocrats who lost much of their power and influence. In the military field, Domitian reinforced discipline and loyalty within the legions. He raised soldiers' salaries and improved their service conditions, ensuring the necessary military fidelity to sustain his regime. Simultaneously, he promoted a series of military campaigns on the empire's borders, especially in Germania and Britannia, both to strengthen the empire's defenses and to divert attention from internal tensions. These campaigns, though costly, served to project the image of Domitian as a strong and decisive leader. However, the most notable mark of his government was the policy of purges. Domitian saw conspiracies everywhere, and to maintain his dominance, he initiated a series of purges against those he suspected of treason. Senators and equestrians were accused of conspiracy based on flimsy or fabricated evidence, resulting in executions, exiles, and property confiscations. Delations became a common practice, encouraged by rewards for those who denounced supposed traitors. This climate of fear and suspicion eroded trust within the ruling classes and paralyzed political opposition. Roman society as a whole suffered from these authoritarian policies. The repression was not limited to the elites; any citizen could be targeted if considered a threat to the regime. Freedom of expression was severely restricted. Philosophers and intellectuals, who traditionally enjoyed some freedom to criticize established powers, were forced into silence or exile. The arts and literature, under the watchful eye of imperial censorship, became vehicles of propaganda praising Domitian's virtues and achievements while suppressing any criticism. Constant surveillance and the culture of delation created an atmosphere of widespread distrust. Families and friends lived in fear of being denounced for trivial reasons, and public life was marked by forced obedience. However, despite the oppression, some forms of resistance persisted. Christianity, already under suspicion, flourished clandestinely, strengthening its internal cohesion in the face of persecution. In short, Domitian's authoritarianism profoundly shaped Roman society. His policies of purges and control, while effective in consolidating his power in the short term, sowed distrust and fear, alienating the elites and the people. This regime of terror would have lasting consequences, contributing to the negative view of his reign after his death and fueling the desire for a return to less oppressive forms of governance. The persecution of Christians during Domitian's reign was one of the most notorious aspects of his authoritarian policy. Motivated by a combination of political, religious, and personal reasons, Domitian saw Christians as a threat to his regime and the traditional Roman order. He not only viewed the new faith as a subversive religion but also as a direct affront to his authority and the imperial cult. Domitian, like many emperors before him, was considered a divine figure. The imperial cult was part of the political and social fabric of the empire, serving as a unifying element among the diverse peoples under Roman rule. Christians, with their refusal to worship any god other than their own, were seen as enemies of the state. Their loyalty to the kingdom of God and not to the emperor aroused suspicions of treason and disloyalty. Moreover, the growing economic and social tensions of the empire created a climate conducive to finding scapegoats. Domitian, seeking to consolidate his power, used Christians as a convenient target to channel public frustrations and justify his repressive policies. Public hostility towards Christians was fueled by rumors and slanders, such as the accusation that they caused natural disasters through their religious practices. Among the Christian leaders who suffered under Domitian's regime, some stood out for the brutality of their punishments and the resistance they demonstrated. Simeon, Bishop of Jerusalem, was one of the most prominent. A descendant of the line of David, Simeon represented a double threat, both as a religious leader and as a symbolic figure. He was captured and, after being subjected to torture, was crucified, a martyrdom that served to strengthen the faith of his followers and inspire resistance. Another notable case was that of Saint John the Evangelist. Imprisoned in Rome, he was subjected to an attempted execution by boiling in hot oil, from which, according to tradition, he miraculously emerged unharmed. This extraordinary event led to his exile on the island of Patmos, where he composed the Book of Revelation, a work that would profoundly influence Christian theology and eschatological vision. Flavia Domitilla, Domitian's niece and wife of consul Titus Flavius Clemens, also suffered due to her Christian faith. Accused of atheism and disloyalty for refusing to worship Roman gods, she was exiled to the island of Pontus. Her husband, Titus Flavius Clemens, was executed on similar charges, demonstrating that not even members of the imperial family were safe from repression. These persecutions, though cruel, did not succeed in extinguishing Christianity. On the contrary, the resistance and martyrdom of these leaders inspired even greater cohesion and determination among the faithful. The memory of their sacrifice became a powerful symbol of faith and resilience, echoing through the centuries and solidifying the Christian narrative of resistance against oppression. Thus, Domitian's persecution had a profound and lasting impact. In attempting to suppress Christianity, he inadvertently strengthened the faith of its followers and promoted the spread of their beliefs. The stories of these persecuted leaders are a testament to the power of faith in the face of tyranny and continue to resonate as an example of courage and resistance in Christian history. The persecution of Christians under Domitian's regime reached a peak of brutality with the campaign to eliminate the line of David. Seeing this lineage as a potential source of insurrection and rivalry to imperial power, Domitian ordered a series of executions and persecutions aimed at eradicating any descendant who could claim legitimacy and lead a rebellion. Simeon, Bishop of Jerusalem, is one of the most emblematic figures of this era of violence. A direct descendant of David, Simeon represented a significant threat to Domitian. Captured by Roman authorities, he was subjected to brutal interrogations and tortures. Despite the pain, Simeon remained steadfast in his faith, refusing to renounce Christianity. His crucifixion was a public display intended to deter other potential dissidents and demonstrate the emperor's relentless power. However, instead of weakening Christians' faith, Simeon's martyrdom strengthened their determination and unity. Saint John, another prominent Christian leader, was also targeted by Domitian's persecution. Known for his leadership and influence, John was arrested and taken to Rome, where he faced an especially cruel execution attempt. He was thrown into a cauldron of boiling oil. According to Christian tradition, John emerged unscathed from this torment, an event considered miraculous by his followers. Unable to execute him, Domitian opted to exile John to the island of Patmos. During this exile, John wrote the Book of Revelation, a work full of prophetic visions and symbolism that would have a lasting impact on Christian theology. Domitian's violence was not limited to these prominent figures. He ordered a systematic search for all descendants of the line of David, resulting in a massacre that extended across various regions of the empire. Men, women, and even children were executed under charges of treason or simply because of their ancestry. The brutality of this elimination campaign reverberated deeply in society, spreading fear and despair among Christians and other oppressed groups. Domitian used violence as a tool of control, believing that eradicating the descendants of David would consolidate his power and eliminate any challenges to his authority. However, this violent repression had the opposite effect. Instead of crushing the spirit of Christians, it strengthened their cohesion and resistance. Accounts of martyrdom, such as those of Simeon and John, became inspiring legends, perpetuating the memory of their faith and courage. The impact of these persecutions was profound and lasting. Domitian's attempt to eliminate the line of David and suppress Christianity not only failed but also solidified Christians' faith and strengthened their determination to resist oppression. The stories of sacrifice and resilience continued to inspire future generations, turning martyrs into symbols of hope and resistance. The era of violence under Domitian left an indelible mark on Roman history. His relentless pursuit to eliminate any real or perceived threat demonstrated the extreme measures an authoritarian ruler could take to maintain power. However, the persistent resistance and courage of the persecuted illustrate the human capacity to face tyranny with dignity and unwavering faith. The relentless persecutions ordered by Domitian against Christians generated a response of remarkable resilience and resistance among the followers of this new faith. Facing a regime determined to eradicate them, Christians not only survived but also strengthened their internal cohesion and commitment to the faith. This resistance was shaped by both visible actions and a clandestine life that defied the emperor's oppression. Christians responded to the persecutions with a combination of courage and innovation. Many sought refuge in underground communities, moving away from cities and living in caves or catacombs where they could practice their faith in secret. These catacombs, often carved deep underground, became sacred sites for worship and burial, symbolizing resistance and the hope of eternal life. The walls of these catacombs were adorned with Christian symbols such as the fish and the Good Shepherd, which served as both religious icons and messages of solidarity and unwavering faith. Beyond subterranean life, Christians developed a mutual support network that transcended social and economic boundaries. The Christian community united around its leaders and scriptures, finding strength in the apostles' words and Jesus' teachings. The celebration of the Eucharist, though conducted in secret, became a central rite reaffirming collective identity and commitment to the faith. This communal spirit was essential for enduring trials and maintaining high morale during persecution. Resistance was not limited to physical survival but also included a vigorous intellectual defense of the faith. Christian leaders, known as apologists, wrote treatises and letters defending Christianity against the slanders and misunderstandings propagated by Domitian's regime. These writings, though dangerous to produce and distribute, helped articulate Christian theology and refute accusations of treason and disloyalty. Names like Justin Martyr and Tertullian emerged as powerful voices capable of confronting the state's repressive logic with rational and inspiring arguments. Martyrdom, though tragic, played a crucial role in Christian resistance. Those executed for their faith became symbols of courage and sacrifice. Their examples inspired others to stand firm in their convictions even in the face of death. Accounts of martyrdom circulated among Christian communities, serving as uplifting narratives that strengthened believers' determination. The memory of these martyrs was preserved and venerated, creating a tradition of reverence that transcended generations. However, clandestine life also brought challenges. The need to operate in secrecy and the constant threat of betrayal required continuous vigilance. Christians developed secret codes and signals to communicate and identify each other, minimizing the risk of infiltration by regime spies. Meetings were held in isolated places and at unusual times to avoid detection by authorities. Despite these adversities, Christians' resilience under Domitian's regime demonstrated the depth of their faith and the strength of their community. The ability to keep the flame of Christianity alive amid such fierce persecution is a testament to the durability and adaptability of Christian faith. Christian resistance not only ensured the immediate survival of the faithful but also established a solid foundation for future growth and expansion. Ultimately, Christians' response to Domitian's persecutions revealed resistance that went beyond mere survival. They demonstrated an impressive capacity for adaptation and innovation, ensuring that their faith not only endured but flourished even under the most adverse conditions. During Domitian's reign, the spread of false accusations against Christians became an effective tool to intensify persecution and consolidate the emperor's authoritarian power. These accusations, often based on rumors and slanders, created an atmosphere of fear and distrust that permeated all of Roman society, exacerbating the already tense relationship between the state and the followers of the new faith. Christians were accused of a series of heinous crimes aimed at dehumanizing them and justifying the severe measures taken against them. Among the most common accusations were cannibalism and the practice of child sacrifice rituals. These grotesque rumors stemmed from the distorted interpretation of Christian rites such as the Eucharist, where the body and blood of Christ were symbolically celebrated. Misunderstanding and manipulation of these practices fueled irrational fear and public hostility. Additionally, Christians were accused of atheism and treason to the state. Their refusal to worship Roman gods and especially to participate in the imperial cult was seen as an act of disloyalty and subversion. The emperor, considered divine, demanded worship as a means of politically uniting the empire. Christian resistance to this worship was used to portray them as enemies of the state loyal to a foreign and invisible authority that threatened the empire's cohesion. A notorious example of defamation occurred during a series of natural calamities that struck the empire, such as earthquakes and plagues. Christians were conveniently blamed for these disasters, accused of angering the gods with their rejection of traditional cults. The population, already frightened and seeking answers for the catastrophic events, easily accepted this narrative. Consequently, enraged mobs erupted into acts of violence against Christians, often encouraged by local authorities who wished to demonstrate loyalty to the emperor. The consequences of these false accusations were devastating. Persecutions became even more brutal and systematic, with mass executions and severe tortures. The fear of being denounced as a Christian led many to live in constant hiding, adopting secret identities and practicing their faith in isolated locations. The atmosphere of distrust spread, affecting not only Christians but also anyone suspected of sympathizing with them. The atmosphere of fear and distrust had profound effects on Roman society. Delations became common, with people denouncing neighbors, friends, and even family members to protect themselves or gain favor with authorities. This climate of constant surveillance undermined interpersonal trust and corroded the social fabric. Public life was marked by forced obedience and suppression of individual expressions that did not align with the regime. However, the defamation of Christians also had a contrary effect to what Domitian desired. The injustice and cruelty of persecutions aroused sympathy in some sectors of Roman society. Reports of martyrdom and Christian courage in the face of death began to circulate, inspiring admiration and attracting new converts. Peaceful resistance and unwavering faith in the face of false accusations served as powerful testimony, challenging the empire's official narrative. In summary, the spread of false accusations against Christians during Domitian's regime intensified persecution and created an atmosphere of fear and distrust that deeply affected Roman society. However, Christians' response to these slanders, marked by resilience and courage, not only reinforced the internal cohesion of the Christian community but also began to sow the seeds for the eventual acceptance and growth of Christianity in the empire. The immediate consequences of persecutions under Domitian's regime had a profound and multifaceted impact on the Christian community. The brutality of imperial actions created a climate of fear and oppression, but paradoxically, it also catalyzed an unprecedented strengthening of Christian cohesion and identity. As persecutions intensified, fear became a constant in Christians' lives. Public executions and tortures became common methods to inspire terror and dissuade the practice of the Christian faith. The possibility of being denounced by a neighbor or even a family member fueled an atmosphere of distrust and paranoia. Worship meetings had to be held in secret, often in remote or underground locations such as the catacombs of Rome, to avoid attracting authorities' attention. Despite this atmosphere of fear, the Christian community's response was remarkably resilient. Christians united as never before, finding strength and solidarity in the collective practice of their faith. Persecution served as a catalyst for a clear and distinct definition of Christian identity. The narrative of suffering and sacrifice became central to Christians' self-understanding, who saw tribulations as an imitation of Christ's suffering. This sharing of suffering and hope cemented a sense of unity and purpose among believers. Persecution's impact also manifested in the strengthening of the Church's organizational structures. With the constant threat of repression, Christian leaders stood out for their ability to maintain community cohesion. Bishops, presbyters, and deacons played crucial roles in guiding and supporting the faithful, both spiritually and materially. The need for discreet and effective communication led to the development of information and support networks that crossed the empire's geographic boundaries. The memory of martyrs played a vital role in the Christian community's internal cohesion. Accounts of their lives and deaths were carefully preserved and transmitted, serving as examples of unwavering faith and courage. These martyrs were venerated not only as heroes but as spiritual intercessors who had already achieved eternal glory. The cult of martyrs, including commemorating their feasts and venerating their tombs, reinforced collective identity and provided a tangible sense of continuity and hope. Christian literature flourished during this period, with texts seeking both to console and instruct the faithful. Christian apologists, writing in defense of the faith, articulated a theology that not only responded to persecutors' accusations but also offered a hopeful and triumphant vision of the future. Works such as Paul's epistles and the Gospels were widely copied and disseminated, providing guidance and inspiration. Moreover, persecutions helped define clear boundaries between the Christian community and the surrounding pagan society. Adherence to the Christian faith required explicit and courageous commitment, deterring lukewarm sympathizers and strengthening true believers' determination. This self-selection process resulted in a more committed and homogeneous community, with an identity distinctly different from traditional Roman religious practices. Ultimately, Domitian's persecutions, despite their intent to destroy Christianity, ended up strengthening Christian faith in unexpected ways. External pressure united Christians, defining and consolidating their collective identity. Martyrdom and resistance became indelible parts of Christian tradition, shaping the future trajectory of the religion. Thus, Domitian's imposed fear failed to extinguish the flame of Christian faith. Instead, it served to kindle it, forging a resilient and united community that would persist and thrive in the centuries to come. Domitian's actions, characterized by fierce persecution of Christians, established a grim pattern that prefigured future persecutions in the Roman Empire. His policy of repression not only attempted to eradicate the emerging Christian faith but also created a legacy of martyrdom that would have a lasting impact on Christian history and the eventual acceptance of the religion in the empire. By promoting a regime of terror, Domitian set a precedent that was followed by other Roman emperors in the following centuries. Subsequent persecutions under emperors such as Trajan, Marcus Aurelius, and Diocletian reflected the repressive strategies initiated by Domitian. These emperors used similar methods of torture, public execution, and propaganda to intimidate and suppress the growing Christian population. The continuity of these practices demonstrated how persecution became a common political tool for dealing with religious movements that challenged imperial authority. However, Christians' reaction to persecutions established a powerful legacy of resistance and faith. Martyrdom became a central element in the Christian narrative, with martyrs celebrated as spiritual heroes. Their sacrifices were seen as imitations of Christ's suffering, elevating them to an almost divine status within the Christian community. Accounts of their deaths, often adorned with miracles and demonstrations of unwavering faith, circulated widely and served to inspire others to maintain their faith even in the face of certain death. This tradition of martyrdom had a profound and lasting impact. First, it strengthened the internal cohesion of the Christian community. The veneration of martyrs and the celebration of their lives through feasts and worship at their tombs created a strong sense of identity and continuity. Second, these accounts of courage and sacrifice gained the admiration of many outside the Christian community, attracting new converts inspired by the martyrs' devotion. Moreover, martyrdom helped shape Christian theology and eschatological vision. The promise of an eternal reward after death and the belief in resurrection became central pillars of Christian faith, reinforced by the martyrs' examples. Christian literature, including the works of apologists and patristic writings, frequently referenced martyrdom as proof of the truth and justice of the Christian cause. The lasting impact of persecutions and martyrdom also prepared the ground for the eventual acceptance of Christianity in the Roman Empire. Christians' perseverance in the face of oppression gained the sympathy of some segments of Roman society, including members of the elite and eventually the Emperor Constantine himself. In AD 313, with the Edict of Milan, Constantine legalized Christianity, marking the beginning of a new era of religious tolerance and integration of Christianity into the empire's political and cultural fabric. Over time, Christianity was not only accepted but became the official religion of the Roman Empire under Theodosius I's reign in the late 4th century. The Christian martyrology, initially a source of pain and loss, transformed into a solid foundation for the expansion and institutionalization of the Christian Church. The martyrs, who once suffered under orders from emperors like Domitian, were now revered in an empire that had embraced the faith they so fervently defended. Thus, Domitian's actions legacy is twofold. While his persecutions prefigured future waves of repression, they also inadvertently strengthened Christian faith and paved the way for Christianity's eventual rise as a dominant force in the Roman Empire. The martyrs' stories continue to be a powerful reminder of human resilience and the capacity of deeply rooted faith to change the course of history.